right, welcome to the American Movie Podcast. This is your host, Matthew Benjamin. What's going on? Okay, I review a lot of Netflix series, and this is possibly one of my favorites. It's near and dear to my heart. It's really, really fantastic. It's a 4-part series called Cooked. And if you're unaware of Michael Pollan, he's an amazing author, and he's written In Defense of Food, which I think is a documentary as well, and then The Omnivore's Dilemma, and then he's written a bunch of them, man. But I've read The Omnivore's Dilemma, and I've seen In Defense of Food, I'm pretty sure. But this is by far the most memorable series of Michael Pollan I've seen because it's so good. It's so good. It's only 4 hours. And it's really, really creative in the way it portrays his message. And pretty much his message is we need to get back to the traditional type of cooking for ourselves and creating it as a practice and applying it in a healthy way rather than letting corporations let us do it or whatever. And I'm going to get off the soapbox now. This is his message anyways. You can do whatever you want. But it's absolutely an illuminating series where he divvies it up into 4 parts, and it's elemental. So it's fire, water, air, and earth. And fire it's really, really crazy because they go to the Aborigines. And these guys were about to be decimated. Like they show a little bit of a history with these guys, and they were about to be decimated. The Australians were about ready to drop bombs they were going under research, and they were shooting rockets into this just blank area. And then they realized, oh my God, there's like a civilization that's been untapped to the 21st century here. Or it might have been the 20th century then. It was like the 80s. So they found these people, and these people were just living off the land, and they were very, very intimate within nature, and they hunted, and they lived off the land, and they're centered upon pretty much in fire right here. So the Aborigines go back every weekend and get back to nature, and they hunt and not scavenge, but they they eat iguanas, and then they hunt big game like I believe it's deer or elk, something like that. It's the bigger animals. So yeah, that's that one was really fascinating to see because when the ladies, they would use fire and they would start brush fires, and it would just hit the barren. Australia's a pretty arid place, so it just hit these weeds and it just took off, and it would burn all of these iguana burrows. So they would just take these steel or rebar poles, push them in these burrows, and if they hit something or hit a burrow, they would just dig down in it, yank out this iguana, and then it's pretty graphic. If you're an animal lover, don't watch this. Then they beat it. I'm like, oh my God. And then after they beat it, they broke its legs. I'm like, oh my, they got like, there's the audible cracks of the legs. And I'm like, Jesus. All right. But anyways, that was really funny. It was just surprising, not funny, but whatever. Like, geez, man, these ladies are just OGs. So yeah, so they get back to that was with fire, and it's just they go from Australia to Southern barbecue in Louisiana. So they go to, and it's all centered upon the tradition and the connection with the meat itself, and actually understanding where it's coming from. And you get a little bit more respect when you understand the processes and that this was truly a living, breathing animal that was alive at one point. So that was the message with fire, and it was really, really illuminating just to see the Aborigines do what they do. And then Southern barbecue, that's really close to me, so I still understand that. Like, I got that pretty well. But the Aborigines was fascinating. And the very next one was water. And by the way, Michael Pollan, he's very much immerses himself in his work. So he was learning all of these along the way too. So like he was going to Southern Louisiana, and he was taking up pit master classes. And then he had a student that he was teaching how to write about food, have him help him cook with water now. Water is number 2. And so yeah, they're showing how the progression of humanity was able to cook on pans. And then once you're able to cook on pans, you're able to add water. And once you're able to add water, you're able to combine various ingredients that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise with the meat and plants. So that was really fascinating to see too. And then they went all the way to India, and they went to, because India is very, very much against westernized eating. And only about 10% of the calories they're getting from like American Western food. So they need, and they're also like crunched for time, just like Americans are. So they found a way around this without supplying the corporations their money and their time. They actually outsourced it to people just in the neighborhood. They outsourced it to people in the neighborhood. They create these tiffins, and it's these big, huge thermos things that are in various sections. They're kind of like, if you think about tuna cans, and then they screw one on top of another, and they're these big, huge, just cylinder things full of different food and various food like lentils and rice and everything. So it's like you get a giant home-cooked meal. And these ladies are helping provide for their family. They get a monthly pay dependent upon how many people want these tiffins. And they just cook. And then they give it to these dudes who jump on these bikes. And they have hooks on these bikes. And these bikes look like they are covered in these cylindrical tiffins and bags full of food and stuff like that, and they just drop them off at people's workplaces. And I thought that was really, really fascinating to see that there was this workaround in between outsourcing it through pretty much corporate means and doing it pretty much from the ground up. So I thought that was really fascinating to see. And so, yeah, they delve deep into India's way of life too, so that was really fascinating. And the other one, there's two left. The other one, third anyways, is air. And it's all centered upon bread. And I found this really fascinating. I didn't realize that sourdough bread has pretty much all the minerals to keep somebody alive, no matter what. Like there's this line in there where, I want to make sure I get it right. It's, if I were to give a man flour and water, he could live for a little while. But if I were to teach him how to make bread with that water, he could live indefinitely. And that was pretty eye-opening. I didn't realize that bread had all those minerals and everything. And bread's 90% air, and that's why it's so crazy that they would, like, you don't think about it, but it is 90% air. There's those ginormous gaps inside of these breads. And they go through how bread became unhealthy. They have this outlook on it where they removed a lot of the whole grains within the bread, and this process of being pretty much processed, they remove a lot of the like nutrients that actually make bread what it is. And if you go around the world, bread is a very intricate and integral portion of people's calories. Like they go to Morocco, and Morocco loves bread so much that it's deemed violent that they drop a knife on it. You can't cut it with a knife. That's a violent act. That's how much Morocco has love for bread. So, and they were saying it's 60% of their calories is derivative from bread. So I was mind blown by that. So it was really, really fascinating to see the air one too. And that was the one that Michael Pollan, the creator of this documentary and the author of this book that's been put into documentary, he said that was his favorite portion of it, was learning how to bake bread. It was the most difficult, and it's an elegant process, but it is the most rewarding in that sense. And then the last one is earth, and earth is all about fermentation. And fermentation is there's so many items. Okay, so like sauerkraut is fermented, kombucha, kimchi, yogurt, chocolate is even fermented. And they go into the deep, I think it's the Amazon, and they go, they find the cacao plant, and this thing looks so weird. It's so bizarre to see this thing. All right, they chop this. It's this giant seed, and it looks like almost like a Nerf football. It's pretty orange, and it's just got grooves in it. Maybe like like a Nerf football size. It's huge. Okay, it's probably a foot long, and so they chop this thing open. And there's these white seeds in there, and it just looks absolutely, it's like slimy and gross. And it looks like out of a scene of Alien. So like they strip these seeds off. There's probably like 10 or 15 seeds inside this giant shell, and it's all white and slimy, and they ferment the chocolate. And they put it in these big, huge boxes, and it's probably like 6x6 just wooden crate boxes that have the top open, and they fill it full of these white, slimy pods or seeds or whatever that are the cocoa seeds. And they leave them in there to ferment for 5 days. And they measure the temperature on the day one. And it's around 30 degrees Celsius, which is like, I want to say it's around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, if I'm right. And then, don't quote me on that, but it ends up gaining 30 degrees within 5 days. Like they just put a little thermometer in there, and it gains 30 degrees. It's like 100 degrees in the center of this box, just due to the process of fermentation and the anaerobic effect of microbes eating the, I think it I am not a microbiologist by any means, if that's not obvious right now. But it goes through the anaerobic process that the bacteria breaks down some of the components of the cocoa plant or the cocoa pod, whatever it is. And then they get this deep, deep, dark red that you remember of like the cocoa seed. So it's really, really fascinating. I did not know that chocolate was derived from the fermentation process. So that was the earth portion. And they go into deep, deep information on this. I'm just giving you the skim, or like the top of it, man. Like it's definitely not boring at all. Like it's so good. And I'm just giving you the spark notes. That's what I was looking for. And so it's really, really good. And the message is very, very good. Like it's just bringing it back to cooking for yourself a little bit more. Don't allow corporate people to take over, because they're going to be able to use the ingredients that suits their needs. And their needs is to maximize their profits while also providing a service or a product. So you want to cook with raw ingredients. That's pretty much it. Like that's all you got to do. That's it. And that was his main ploy. And it's a very rewarding process when you do it, and you feel very, very good after. And you're getting nutrients that will actually provide you with sustenance, not just chips and stuff that is highly, highly refined and processed. So this was a good one, man. This was really good. Netflix is killing it with their series. And this was unbeknownst to me. Like this was from 2016 too. So it's a little bit, that's like so old now. Everything is so fast that a year old is just like, dude, they didn't know anything back then. Like, so yeah, so check this out. It is called Cooked. It's by Marco Poland. It's streaming on Netflix right now, so feel free to check it out if you like it. This sounds interesting to you. I just skimmed the surface of it. There's so much information and so much great insight in here that I think you would benefit a lot if you just watched it, and you'd be a better person. Boom shakalaka. It's 4 hours of your life, and that's it. And you know how to cook then. It pretty much goes into the entire process of cooking bread too. So which, if that's up your alley, or if it seems like it would be up your alley, check it out. So thank you so much for watching. This has been Matthew Benjamin with the American Movie Podcast. Thank you so much. Let me know if you're going to watch this. Don't forget to subscribe, and a lot of good stuff to come. So make sure you're paying attention. Hit the bell if you want. And thank you so much. Bye, bye, bye. Bye, 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 bye.